All right, Parshas Vayetze Yud Kislev and Tavshin Chavav 19, end of 65, going to 66. So it says like this: Yud Kislev is Yom HaGeula She'ad Meramsai. The 10th of Kislev is the day of the liberation and the Geula, redemption of the Ad Meramsai, the Mittler Rebbe. He's the son of the Alter Rebbe. The Kivan Shebasa Reisha Gufei Azam. And because the body goes after the head, Shabasa Resha, from the beginning, the head, the body extends. This is also our redemption. It means that the Rebbe is applying that this is like the beginning of the Geula for Mashiach. We already in Chabad, we don't say Tachnun on the 10th of Kislev. What about Shabbos? When we don't say Tachnun anyways, but there's still things that we omit from our tefillah if we don't say Tachnun on that specific day. For instance, Avar Rachamim before Musaf, or the Shemona Esrei of Musaf, and Tzidkas Chotzedek, which we say by Mincha. So because the Geula starts with Yud Kislev, and therefore it affects also us, that we don't say Tachnun even today. Where Pratisya said, the Rebbe explains more. HaGeula b'Poyel Ha'isa b'Yud Kislev. The Geula happened on the 10th of Kislev. Shachar was here of Shimon, we're just starting 186. Second paragraph, we're talking about Yud Kislev. But the Rebbe says Yud Kislev, the Geula is a redemption for everyone. So today, the Thursday is Yud Kislev, the Mittler Rebbe's Yom HaGeula. So the Rebbe says HaGeula b'Poyel Ha'isa b'Yud Kislev. When was the redemption? When did it happen? The liberation, let's say, from him. Again, he was imprisoned for efforts of Yiddishkeit and Hasidus and other things that they thought he was doing that was counter to the Tsar's interest. So he says the Geula b'Poyel Ha'isa b'Yud Kislev. The redemption itself happened on 10th of Kislev. Shechol Azbim Echad, which turned out to be on Sunday. Parshas Vayishlach, as we have in the notes of the previous Rebbe who wrote the different happenings of things. In his Rishimas, he writes exactly the date Yud Kislev that fell out in that year. However, like in many situations, but the same thing happened to the previous Rebbe, and in certain ways, the Alter Rebbe also didn't exactly come right away. That the actual message of redemption came on Shabbos. It means they told him he will be released, but it was Shabbos, so they didn't release him until Sunday. Again, he wasn't in actual. It was very severe, the situation, but they were able to organize that he shouldn't be in actual prison. He wasn't well already by then, and he was in house arrest. But it was Yom Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Vayetze Tes Kislev, so it fell out. Tes Kislev, Shabbos Vayetze is when he found out that he will be released, and that happens to be his birthday. After midday. So after midday on Shabbos, 9th of Kislev is when they notified them. And what was happening at that time when the Mittler Rebbe was informed? He had his Chassidim around him. He was saying the famous mimer that many times the Rebbe would say mimer around Tes Yud Kislev on this idea of Ata Echad. What's Ata Echad? You're one. This is part of the Mincha davening. So part of the Mincha davening we say Ata Echad v'Shimcha Echad. So the Mittler Rebbe was saying a mimer expanding on the idea of Ata Echad, Kimi Itcha, Himinuchas, what's the idea of the Itcha, and what's the difference between Echad, Yachid, all the ideas that are discussed in this mimer. As the previous Rebbe tells the story that he was saying the mimer of Ata Echad. If I remember correctly, learning the mimer, one of the main questions is, why do we say Ata Echad, not Ata Yachid? Because Yachid is harder than Echad. And the Rebbe says this year, meaning 1965 going to 66, Tafshin Chavav, this year works out exactly. If you look at the calendar many times, obviously it's 1 in 7 days, the option, but it falls out quite often, Yud Tes Kislev on Shabbos. So this year, the year of 19 Tafshin Chavav, it fell out that Yud Kislev was on Shabbos, not Tes Kislev. Well, the Rebbe says, Yud Kislev kosher im inin hagula. We know that the 10th is a specific day that's a good day for Geula, for redemption. Why? It says, Rabbeinu Zaken Kosev Bigeras Hayedua. The Alter Rebbe wrote in the famous letter after his liberation on the 19th of Kislev. With regard to his liberation on the 19th of Kislev, which fell out on Yom Gimel Shehuchvu by Kitov, that his redemption turned out to be on a Tuesday, and Tuesday is a day that says 2 times Kitov in creation, which is an auspicious day of all the days of the week. Kishakarasi b'Sefer Tilim, he said, the Alter Rebbe says that he was in the middle of saying the Tilim, and the pasuk Pada b'Shalom Nafshi, he said the pasuk Pada b'Shalom Nafshi, which is in chapter 50, and Yatasi b'Shalom, as he's saying Pada b'Shalom, which means to be Pada, means he's going to be redeemed in peace, he was redeemed in peace. And the previous Rebbe asked the question, why would he be saying, obviously, chapter 50? Meaning to say is that the 19th of Kislev is if you divide the Tehillim of the month, the 19th of Kislev starts chapter 90. So why would he be saying chapter 50? So the previous Rebbe explains, while the Alter Rebbe was in prison, he added to his daily saying of Tilim, Lahagit Shir Tilim, B'yichud Amiris Tehillim V'shrufi, B'shvil Matzavi B'hoiva, he added his systematic Tilim saying, aside from just saying a lot of Tilim, but his organized Tilim, because of the situation that he was in, i.e. being in prison. So the Rebbe explains, according to the exact Seder, the organization of things, how the Alter Rebbe and all the Rebbeim said Tilim, they always said the Tilim according to the day of the month. And later, in the life of the previous Rebbe, already in the beginning of Russia, the previous Rebbe started what's known as the idea that we say Tilim after davening according to the days of the month. We say the Tilim of the month. That the previous Rebbe introduced the idea that all the Chassidim and all the Jewish people, and the previous Rebbe's takana of instituting, of saying Tilim was not just on behalf of Chassidim, but for all the Jews. Anyone who's called a Jew, the previous Rebbe says, should really take it upon themselves and as a minyan, and to say a Kaddish afterwards is to say the daily Tilim according to the division of the month. Should say the Tilim as it is divided in the days of the month. It means there's 30 days in the month. There's 30 portions of Tehillim. If the month is 29 days, so day 30 and day 29 are said together. But the Alter Rebbe said chapter 50, and chapter 50 is not part of the 19th day. Like I said, 19th day is starting from chapter 90. So why did he say chapter 50? Because if you divide the Tilim by 7, not by 30, so then chapter 50 falls out on the day of the third day, which is Yom Shlishi, which is Tuesday. Tuesday's Tehillim, if you divide it by 7, not by the month, is chapter 50, falls out in the Tuesday's reading. The reading for Tuesday, and that was the day that Yutes Kislev happened in that year. And that's why the Alter Rebbe was saying basically Pada b'Shalom Nafshi when he was redeemed, not because it's part of the 19th day's reading, but he took upon himself extra Tehillim for his situation to say not just the monthly, but to say the weekly portion of Tehillim. This is all seems like it's Pada b'Shalom Nafshi became the call of not just the redemption, but also what the redemption was leading towards. The idea of Pada b'Shalom Nafshi is what all the Maimarim are explaining. The idea that takes us till Mashiach. That we should be Pada b'Shalom. We have to be redeemed with peace. And Ma'isa Avasin Labanim. This is a story that happens to our forefathers, meaning the previous Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe and the Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, because the Mittler Rebbe we're going to see his liberation happened on the 10th. And the 10th is the reading of Pada b'Shalom. Shagam, chapter 50 is the beginning of the 10th reading. Shagam Gulas Admer Amtsoi, Haisa Kashurim Amir Sapasik Pada b'Shalom Nafshi, and the same thing. The Mittler Rebbe also, when he was saying, not the time he was saying a mimer, but in the day that he said Pada b'Shalom, the day for the 10th reading, is when he was redeemed. Kivin Shapasik Zeh, he says, Kivin Shapasik Zeh, and like we said before, the Rebbe's. Hold on a second, guys. I think someone's trying to jump on, unless I'm missing what the person is saying. All right. Because so he also was saying Pada B'Shalom. Asir the Yom Asir Chodesh on the 10th of the Chodesh. Okay. So basically, we see that there's the idea, there's the connection of Pada B'Shalom with both the redemption of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe. Achsarch Lahavin. Here the Rebbe is going to ask the question. What is the connection between the redemption of the Mittler Rebbe with our Parsha? So we understand how it has to do with the day. That the 10th of Kislev is a day auspicious for redemption because that's the day of the reading Pada B'Shalom Nafshi. Where David HaMelech is saying Pada B'Shalom Nafshi. So Parshas Vayetze. But what does it have to do with Parshas Vayetze? L'chura any movement seemingly doesn't make sense. Vayetze Yaakov mi Ber Shava Vayel Charona. What happens on Vayetze? And we read the Parsha of Vayetze on Shabbos, of course. A Parshas Vayetze is about Yitzchak, Yaakov leaving Yitzchak and going to Haran to Lavan. Hayitzimi Ber Shava Be'eretz Yisrael, leaving your comfort zone of Eretz Yisrael. It's going to Haran, and of all places outside of Eretz Yisrael. Haran Avshal Makam Bailam, it's anger, the place of anger of God, of the world. And that's all about Gullus. Parshas Vayetze, we read about the beginning of Yaakov's Gullus. And here we're saying that Yud Kislev is about Geula. Based on the teachings of our rabbis. That we know from all the drushes, that means the Maimorim, starting from the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe in Toras Chaim, which is the Mittler Rebbe's Chassidus on the Parsha, based similar to Torah Or, but more elaborate. And also the Maimorim of his successor, meaning the successor of the Mittler Rebbe, his nephew and son-in-law, the Tzemach Tzedek. The Rebbe is mentioning that today, that 1965, 66 is 100 years from the passing of the Tzemach Tzedek. In his writings in his publication called Or HaTorah, that they explain in the Chassidus, they explain what is the idea of Yaakov leaving Beersheba, going to Haran, has two explanations. One explanation is Aleph, Beersheba, Kol Asvir Sabina. Be'er, what's Be'er? Be'er is a well of seven. A well of seven means what's the concept of a well? A well is the source. So it's the source of seven. It's talking about the attribute of Bina. Shemimena, from Bina, meaning understanding, right? When you have Chachma, just an idea that's not broadened yet, you can't give birth to anything because it's not been totally understood. But when something's understood, it can give birth to emotions. So therefore, Sfir Sabina Shemimena Nimshachim Shivas Hamidas. Where does the midas come from? Our understanding. When we properly understand the situation, we can react to it. It could inspire a reaction, a midah. That's why Bina is called the mother of the children. What's the mother of the children? She gives birth to the seven midas. That Chacham Bina Das are parents that give birth to the midas. Shiva Simei Binyan, like the 7 days of making creation of the world, or through the midas. Midas ain't told us Chabad. Midas are children. Again, in Chassidus it explains whether it's revealing the midas you already have, right? But at the end of the day, is the revelation of a midah only comes through understanding. V'charana koyas v'yosamalchus. So Beersheba is the well of seven of to elaborate and understand. And what is Haran? Haran, which is narrow, and is the place of Sfir Malchus, which what's Malchus? Malchus is Shirag Le'Yerodes. It goes down to Biyah. Means it's beginning of a creation of separation. So Malchus allows for separation. While we're still in the seven midos, it's all manifestation of godliness. But to create something separate, that only happens for Malchus. It's the narrow of the throat. And what comes out? That the dibur, right? So is going to be concealed. You're not going to allow for the speech to come out, and therefore the Dvar Hashem, the word of God, is not revealed in the world, and it's a world that doesn't have revelation. It means there's the word Dvar Hashem creates the world, but it doesn't reveal godliness in the world, and you have to find God, and that happens from Malchus. So Malchus begins the concealment. So one thing is Beersheba, he's leaving this well of seven to go to Haran, to go to Helam. He's going from Gilui, from revelation to Helam. So that's a gullus, right? Obviously. And Beersheba, that's one explanation of Beersheba. Next explanation of Beersheba is Chasfir Samalchus. The Beersheba is it's itself. It means there's two ways to look at Beersheva. Beersheva is a well of seven. The question is the well that creates seven, or is it the well that receives seven? So if you look for the first explanation, is the well that creates seven. It's the bina that gives us the feelings. Now Malchus also is the receptacle of the seven, right? Zar and Malchus together. Zar is the midah, so Zar goes into Malchus. So Malchus is the receptacle of the seven. So it could be the be'er, not that creates the seven, that the be'er that receives the seven. Be'er shever kasfir Malchus. Shemekabeles mishivas amidas, that gets from the midas, means how is Malchus? Yes, is limitations, but it's limitations based on it takes all the components of the midas, and it gives off creation based on the midas, but by concealing the midas. It means you don't see the midas, but it conceals the midas. But its way of doing things is based on the midas. It means its character comes from the midas. But the outcome, you don't see the midas from the outcome. You just know that it exists, because otherwise, why would you say something? It's like speech, right? Why would you say something and not something else? Why do you scream? Why did you say nasty? Why do you say nice? Why do you say loving words? All that is because how you're feeling is maybe not exactly expressed. The words themselves could be disconnected from how the person may not know exactly what's going on in your well of seven. But the reason you chose these words was based on the well of seven. So that's the well of seven that creates the kind of speech that you're going to have. So Beersheva calls for Samach Shemakabelis Mishivas Hamidas, like the Mittel Rebbe says, he calls him the Bala Geula because this is his day of redemption. Shapirish Beersheva, what does Beersheva mean? Shemakabeles, that it received Kamoi Be'er Kipshutai, like a well that Misheva that comes from seven. Not that it receives its character from the seven, not that it gives off seven. So again, there's two explanations. The first explanation is it's a well that creates seven. The second one is a well that receives seven. But bina is the source of the midas. So there's a difference if something's the source or the receptacle. So the midas are, from one side there's a be'er that creates the midas, on the other side there's a be'er that receives the midas. And what does he do? He takes the characteristics of this be'er and he brings it to a world of separation. So that's again, do we look at going into Malchus to create separation, or do we look after Malchus was created with its characteristics to go into even deeper? It means the second pshat is that Vayelech Harana is even deeper of a separation, because the first level is a separation to create Malchus, which is they're going to create something that is separate. And here you're going into the separation that's been created. What is the common point between the two explanations? That one, either way, however you look at it, is it's a descent. Anyway, whether it's a descent to create Malchus or a descent from Malchus to create separation, question is what level of descent it is. But it's definitely a Yerida at the end of the day. So the question comes back, if the whole parsha of Vayetze is about Golus, what's this have to do with Geula? The Rebbe says, we'll understand this. There's another explanation that says the opposite. The Yaakov leaving Beersheva and going to Charana is the idea of an elevation from below up. What's this explanation? It says, Isa b'medrash, the Medrash teaches us, Reishis Rabbah. He's coming from the well of the covenant. Amar Yaakov. Yaakov says, what covenant? The covenant, the origin of the name Beersheva, it gets a few reasons why it's called Beersheva, right? Yitzchak calls it Beersheva. Avram calls it Beersheva. So Yaakov says, that he doesn't want to have to deal. He wants to leave Avimelech. What's the common name of both Avram calling it Beersheva and Yitzchak calling it Beersheva is connected to Avimelech forcing a covenant that Yaakov doesn't want to be part of. So he runs away from the covenant. I don't want to be part of Avimelech. I don't want Avimelech to include me into his story of Beersheva. Just like your forefathers, your grandfather, meaning Avram, made a promise with me, Beersheva, right? It says, Al Ken Kara Beersheva, is I don't want to be part of that Shvuah. Nimta, Mishaha B'Simcha B'nei Shiva Dairis. Shari Aidei Hashvua Shel Avram Avimelech Nisakev Knisis Bnei Yisrael Meshach Shiva Dairis. He says that I'm going to cause an extension. Every time Avimelech was like one of these conditional ceasefires, right? It constantly changes the rules. Every time, basically, the Be'er Sheva that Avimelech was able to accomplish, every time he made a Shvua, it pushed down that the Jewish people couldn't go into the land for 7 generations. So if he figured he's going to keep on applying this same pressure on Yaakov, and then just push it another generation. So he says, when Avram made his covenant with Avimelech, it made that for 7 generations the Jewish people couldn't enter the land. Avram said, God tells Avram, you went and made these 7 things that you established by Beersheba when you made the covenant with Avimelech. That was not to my liking. Your children have to wait 7 generations for their joy, meaning to go back to Eretz Yisrael. It's brought down. It explains Yaakov's avoiding to be part of this, to extend this ceasefire with Avimelech in 2 ways. One way is Shiva Dairis Hayim Avram ad Yeshua. One way is you count 7 generations from Avram to Joshua. Shas Chilik Yikar Haaretz. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So we have Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov is 3. Levi is 4. Kahas is 5. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Levi is 4. Kahas is 5. Amram is 6. And Moshe Rabbeinu is 7. And Moshe passes away. Only then Yeshua goes into the land. Yaakov had Yaakov extended that covenant with Avimelech. I'm not sure why Yitzchak's covenant doesn't get included. Oh, he says. Basically, Avimelech never asked Yitzchak to do a new covenant. He said, just don't annul the covenant I made with your father. So he agreed not to annul it, so therefore we don't start counting again from Yitzchak. But Yaakov was scared that he would enforce on him to do a new covenant, and the new covenant would make it another generation. Or you could say that you could start counting that even in Moshe's time it finishes. Why? From the covenant of Yitzchak until Yeshua captured Gam Hema Zayin Daris V'Hainu Yeshua's Yitzchak Ikvus HaKnisa L'Eretz Dar Noisev Yaakov Choshesh She'im Yishava Yaakov Oid Dar Noisev. Sorry, somewhere or another the Medrash says that Eretz Sicho and Oig is 7 generations from Yitzchak. Basically, I thought Eretz Sicho and Og was conquered before, but either way, he says that it's 7 generations. Doesn't say the calculation. And Yitzchak extended it 1 more generation. Yaakov was scared it extended another generation. He's leaving the covenant. He doesn't want to be part of this. If I stay around, this guy's going to ring me in some way or another. He always gets into the story, and I don't want to be part of his story, and I don't want to be part of this extension. And the Jewish people are not going to have to wait another generation on my account to have to deal with Avimelech. It's a winning shagul that's ready to redemption. So according to the Medrash, it's redemption because it secures that we shouldn't have to wait another generation to enter the land. He leaves the shvua, he leaves the covenant. I'm not part of the covenant. At least he's able to avoid. I think from the Medrash it's mashma that if had Yaakov done the covenant with Avimelech, not only would it be 1 more generation, it could have been possibly 7 more generations. He would have tried to manipulate it to make it a whole new covenant. Either way, it would have extended the time of when the Jewish people could go into the land, and because of that, he didn't want to have to do. He didn't want to have to do anything with. Basically, saying is that if Yitzchak starts another 7 generations, so for him also would start another 7 generations. Right? Either way, Vapiza Yesh Lefarish means it would be 2 more or 1 more. Vapiza Yesh Lefarish. Gam ve'yel charana l'malyusa char milashin cherus. There, Yaakov is going charana from not to the narrowness of revelation, but he's going to the redemption of creation, right? It says Shreimezes alim da Torah. Shayad nasa ben chayrim became free, like it says that Torah makes a person free. So he went to study Torah, and because he went to study Torah, he went to Cheres. whether it's the studying of Torah with Geula, all that, either way, it's the idea of freedom, which is connected to holiness, and therefore he was able to make sure that his children shouldn't be in Golus any longer. So therefore, it's an extension. It's an elevation. He leaves Beersheba to go towards redemption. And the Rebbe says here, these two explanations are not a contradiction. Similarly, they're a contradiction. One explanation is that Yaakov is leaving the well of seven one way or another to extend the concealment. Another answer is that he's running away from extending the Gullus. So one is a bright spot, one is a dark spot. So how is it not a contradiction? The Rebbe says like this. This is the Nakud of the Sicho. This is the point that we're getting to. How does a person get redemption and freedom? Choron in the way of Cheirus. Where does a person, this is a theme of Chassidus and the Rebbe all the time. How does a person find true freedom? Is the negative of Choron. Choron means both. Your chayrus comes from your helem, from your concealment. Hard times, concealed moments bring out your true redemption. Why? He says, the same place where you find galus is where you're going to find chayrus. Why? The person has to know that when you're connected to Torah, so you're connected to Cheres, not to the Shiva that's happening. It means you're connected to the bigger picture. Like my father said, only our bodies went through exile, and to go to be slaves at different kings. But our souls, but our souls were not put into exile. Anything connected to our religion, for Yiddishkeit, the Torah Yisrael mitzvah umin hagav, to the Torah of Yisrael, the commandments and the customs. No one can give an opinion. Doesn't make a difference where we find ourselves. There's no one who could enslave us when it comes to our Torah mitzvahs. Where is there a source that the previous Rebbe said that only, I think it's from the words of his father-in-law, that only our gufim, only our bodies went into Galus, but not our religion, not our souls. Where's the source of that in Torah? Maybe our souls also went into Galus. So he says, there's a pasuk. The pasuk says, Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim avadehim. The Jewish people, Yisrael, the neshama, is a servant to God. Shtari kadem, my bill of rights, God says, come before anyone else. There's no avdus, there's no real slavery by neshama. When it comes to serving God, we're not really a servant of God. We're not enslaved by God. How do you truly become a free person? Is connecting yourself to Torah mitzvahs. Because you're connected to the king. So much so, a servant of the king is the king himself or herself. That Avram was promised until the Nar Pras to have the Eretz Yisrael. Why does it become a big river? It's not necessarily a big river. It only becomes big because it's connected to Eretz Yisrael. So to a person is an Eved Melech. You're connected to the king. You're yourself the king. Like a person, a servant of a king is a king. Like it's explained in the Chassidus that not only that you come through avoda, through toil, to become that you like a forced elevation, but you become truly an elevated person through Torah. But how do you reveal that a person is truly a free person? Only comes through Torah. So the Rebbe is explaining here is that the expression of the idea is that I owe the Jews are slaves to me before slaves to anyone else. So he says that means we're like slaves to God. He says no, you're truly a free person, but the condition of your freedom is Torah mitzvahs. How do you really find your true inner freedom? Is connecting to Torah mitzvahs, connecting to the king. But for you to do that, you have to have the Shiva to the Melech. You have to be connected to the king. You're a free person, but your freedom, it's not that it's conditioned on Torah mitzvahs. It only finds itself through Torah mitzvahs. So the hisgalus, the revelation of your true self, that's a free person, is only through Torah. For the Torah, the Rebbe says, Torah itself, the whole idea of Torah is beyond galus. Halamis vastarim v'kushis shaboim mitzad elumasav, all the questions and challenges that come from the other side. Only when it comes to the challenge, to the darkness of galus. Why do we say that Torah becomes free? That in the darkness we found God, that we find that Talmud Bavli has more darkness. In Bavel, there's more darkness than the revelations of Vayetze Yisrael. Therefore, Talmud Bavli is stronger than Talmud Yishalmi, is because the freedom, when you have a pushback, the freedom wants to reveal itself more. And therefore, the revelation of the freedom comes through the darkness. So too over here. Shadavka b'charon, only in Charon. Shoinin shal galus, where there's galus. Sarch lifal inyan shal gula. That's where gula comes from. Meaning to say is that the geula is freedom. Where's the necessity? Where's the call for freedom? Where's there a call for a person to reveal their inner cheres? Is when there's a pushback, and the pushback comes from galus. So he's saying it's that yes, Yaakov is running away to bring geula, but even according to the explanation that Yaakov was descending from Beersheba, from the heights of Beersheba to galus, it's also geula. Why is it also Geula? Because Geula comes, where's the beginning of Geula? Where does the person get that focus? Where does the person get the direction of what's important to them? Where do things become very clear to a person is in a time of challenge. And the time of challenge is that clarity reveals the freedom of the person that may have not been revealed as easily had the person not go through the challenge. He goes out from the promise, either he made it 7 generations or 1 generation closer. Either way, it was bringing the geula to a shorter amount of time that the geula should be, and that was why, because he himself experienced galus to start the revelation. Meaning to say, imagine Yaakov never would have had galus, so we would have one less beginning of self-refinement, of self-revelation. So therefore, the galus would extend longer. If the shvatim, and on a lower level, I'm just explaining the way I understand it, had the shvatim on the lower level been the ones who started the challenge, let's say Mitzrayim, so then we would have much more work to do to reveal our inner freedom. Because Yaakov started it, he made it a generation earlier, and therefore the geula came earlier, and therefore the redemption came earlier. So the whole idea of going to Beersheba was a beginning of redemption, because the redemption, you can't leapfrog it. You can't leapfrog. If you want to find true freedom, it has to go through the process, and the process was started by Yaakov, and he made sure that it should start earlier, so therefore it should finish earlier. So let's see if we have a little bit more time. Just see if there's one more word we could learn on the Sicho. He says, okay, let's learn the last Sif Yud on page 193. He says, Nisker Liel, mentioned before Sif Aleph, that Shakesharigia Besuras Agula Beim Shabbos Kodesh Taskisla Fayadim Ramsoi Beemsa Amir Smaimar Chasidis Ate Echad. He said in the beginning of the Sicha, when did the Mittel Rebbe hear that he was redeemed? When he was in the middle of saying a Maimar Chasidis that says Ate Echad, you're one, and he says, and a slogan that's been ringing in everyone's ears in Eretz Yisrael and worldwide since October 7th, Mika Amcha Kisrael, who's like the Jewish people, Goy Echad Baretz. They're a person, they're Goy Echad, they're only people in the world, a single person. When you do a Piskim Rabbeinu Zaken, it's known what the Alter Rebbe said, explaining what does it mean, Goy Echad Baretz. Goy Echad Baretz means like a unique people amongst in the earth. But the Alter Rebbe explained it to mean Goy Echad Baretz, that Shebnei Yisrael Heim Goy Shemamshech Echad Baretz. Who are the people that bring Echad in the world, reveal Echad, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Ekeinu, Hashem Echad in the world? That's Yisrael. This is like we said before, the part of the Sicho we learned, the part of the Sicho we probably did not learn. With Alter Rebbe, the Rebbe continues with this idea of Geula coming through Galus. That how is Goy Echad Ba'aretz revealed? How do we reveal the Echad of Shema in the world? Is through Avodas Habirurim, going through the separation, going through revealing godliness within creation. That's why on the Parsha of Vayetze, what did we read on Parsha of Vayetze's Mincha? Yaakov sends angels ahead of him to his brother Esav. What does Rashi say? He doesn't send messengers called malachim. He sends angels, meaning really, literally angels. You know, the Maggid said that what did Yaakov send? He sent the mamish. He only sent the tangible of the angels, but the spirit of the angels he didn't give Esav. The Harish Yaakov Choshav, at the time, we know that Yaakov thought She'esav Nisbarkva, that Esav was also ready. Yaakov went 20 years in Lavan. He went through Birurim. He thought Esav's ready. Let's go to Mashiach. The Rebbe is asking, seemingly it's a contradiction. On one side, we say Yaakov thinks that Esav's ready for Gula. And the second time, the Maggid teaches us that he sent malachim mamish, he sent actual angels, meaning to say he only sent the mamish of the angels, not the spirit of the angels. It means he didn't really trust Esav. Even thinking that Esav was ready for Geula, he didn't give him all the angels, all of what the angels have. That idea is, she's asking this that he went and sent a messenger to Esav. When you go out to the world, the Rebbe is teaching us an amazing lesson. When you go out to the world and you engage in birurim, sometimes you do things that are, you get your feet dirty, and you can't clean up without getting a little bit dirty. So you have to separate within yourself your mamish. Mamish means the poil mamish, means your actual what you're doing. Sometimes you're doing things that seemingly are not really Torah things, but they bring eventually to Torah. So you have to remember, just be focused that your spirit stays strong within you. Even if you're doing things that are mamish, that are kind of actual, that don't have, they're not directly involved with kedusha. In the same time, malachim mamish. Benegela malachim letzinu shegam koiches ateva nikra b'shem malachim. Mashkas of Rambam lechem adgishim malachim mamish lahirish aydei koiches ateva b'vad efshar liyes lifal aved spirum el yesh tzarich b'malachim mamish lahainu koiches ruchim avira. He says also it's not good enough. Malachim could be called acts of nature and powers of nature. So the Rashi says, Malachim Mamish, it's not good enough to have just natural resources to make a difference in the world. You have to get onto the real angels, which is spirituality. What is the message? Is a two-sided message. On one side, you have to put as much spiritual power, Malachim Mamish, actual angels, in your changing the world. On the other side, yes, because when you're going out to Esav, you're going out to the world and making tikkun olam, you're going to make the world a better place. Remember that you're putting in all the koiches, all the spiritual power you have, you put into changing the world. But don't forget, only give the mamish, only the act that needs to be done, but the real spirituality has to stay in a holy spot, shouldn't be vulnerable. By Dezeh, he says, then it could be done properly. The Rebbe is hinting to people who cross the line, sometimes saying, "Well, it's for the sake of Kiruv, for the sake of Tikkun Olam, you could bend a few rules." The Rebbe says, "No bending any rules." That's what the Rebbe is getting at. You have to stay focused. The mamish you put in as much effort, but don't the spirituality of it has to stay whole. Until we get to the situation. The promise, when Mashiach comes, then the whole world will see. This Shabbos, that there's no one else but Hashem. There's nothing else but God. Shabbos, everyone, and good Yom Tov. Laila Tov.